Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we're gonna answer a few more questions that you guys sent in the comment section of my videos. I think we skipped last week. Sorry about that. I'll do my best to answer as many of your questions as possible. So if you have an orchid related question, make sure you're subscribed to my channel and leave a comment down below or anywhere on my videos, and I'll do my best to answer, sometimes in the comment section and sometimes if I feel anybody can benefit from talking about the subject in a video. So without further ado, let's get straight to the questions. So the first question comes from Cameron, and they're asking if orchids can grow new spikes if we remove the previous year's ones. And the answer is yes, of course. You can remove the flower spikes if they're done flowering, if they got too long and they're just a hassle to keep on the plant, if they're starting to die off and dry. Of course you can remove the already bloomed flower spikes, and I'm guessing you are referring to a Phalaenopsis because it's a Phalaenopsis video. So yes, no worries, the orchid is absolutely not affected if you cut the previous year's flower spikes. It needs to grow leaves, it needs to grow a bigger root system perhaps, and then in the appropriate season it will definitely create a new flower spike. Cynthia is asking if they can repot their Phalaenopsis orchid even though it's producing new roots. So just to make sure that I am understanding your questions correctly, you have a Phalaenopsis orchid, maybe you just purchased it in a pot in a medium, and now you're seeing root tips starting to grow from the axis, maybe further up, and you're wondering if you can change the medium, if you can repot right now. Well, yes, absolutely, it is the perfect time to repot because the orchid is in vegetative growth, meaning it grows roots and leaves, and the new roots which will grow will get adjusted to the medium you're gonna use if you plan on switching it. In the sense, change the type of medium you're using. If you just want to refresh the bark, again, it's absolutely okay, no need to worry. When new roots start to grow, typically for any orchid, it's a good opportunity to repot. And even if one of your orchids is producing a little flower spike, again, I'm not convinced you're gonna affect the flower spike. However, since the flower spike might be a result of the little cool down you had a few weeks ago, it might stop developing because right now it's actually spring to summer when Phalaenopsis orchids grow leaves and roots. So the flower spike might continue to grow or might stop. Don't be worried if it's gonna get paused and will not grow anymore. It's just not the season for it. The orchid might decide to start growing it again in the autumn or winter, or might create a totally new flower spike. All the possibilities are possible, I guess. So I hope my answer helped you out. Pat is asking, how is the Neofinetia different from other small Vandas? Well, depends from which point of view. I'll take care, for example. The Neofinetia does take slightly different care or can tolerate other things than typical Vandas, Orchids, and so on. So first of all, the Neofinetia can be grown in sphagnum moss, and this is actually the traditional way, as you might know. Of course, it might be easier to work with in certain climates, but overall, the Neos can actually be potted in bark and sphagnum moss. In semi-hydro, I had mine in semi-hydro, and it did very well. While Vandas, they can be finicky when it comes to potting medium, and as you might know, pretty much people prefer to keep them bare-rooted in baskets or just simply dangling in the air. The Neos, not that I don't think they can be grown like a Vanda, I just believe it would be more hassling because I feel like they do require more water than a Vanda, especially in their growing season. So that's one. Second, the quantity of light, and here we will have split opinions. There are professional Neofinetia growers and hybridizers which suggest the Neos should be kept in bright shade, not direct sunshine. They suggest Neos bloom better, look better, grow better in bright shade rather than bright light. But you will find growers who grow these orchids in very bright light. I think the truth is in the middle, and since I only have one specimen of a Neofinetia, I don't think I am the most suited person to actually talk about what they prefer. But I do know that the vast majority of Vandas do enjoy very bright light, with the exception of the Orchids, some of them at least. All the other Vandas typically bloom and grow better in very, very bright light. Neos, I think you can get away with artificial light or bright shade. I'll share with you, actually, I'll try to find that video with that grower who talks about Neos. I'll link it down below if I find it. Fingers crossed I find it. And then there's the growth pattern. A Neofinetia looks like this. Very bushy, it is prone to creating a lot of keikis. This orchid is a monopodial, not sympodial, so it's not like a paphiopedilum. All of the growths are actually keikis, and it's prone to creating a lot of keikis. That's okay, it's typical for Neofinetias, and in time you'll have this really nice bush of a neo. Not many Vandas grow like this. Yes, there are a few which are prone to keikis, but the vast majority of Vandas pretty much have 1 or 2 keikis. This one, as long as it lives, it creates keikis all the time, all the time. So there is a difference in the way they grow as well. The size obviously is a difference, but as far as care is concerned, the Neos prefer more water and maybe less light than Vandas. When it comes to temperatures, again, I'm not necessarily sure if I'm the best person to talk about it. I only have 1 Neo and I cannot say I fully understand this plant, but it would appear the Neo kind of likes to be cooled down in the winter time. Vandas, not so much. Most of them are vastly warm growers. So that's another difference. To be fully honest with you, I would prefer the Neo to be called Neo just because it is so different. But hey, genetics tells us that this is a Vanda. What to do? Catherine is saying she has leaves from her Phalaenopsis orchid flower spike and she doesn't know what exactly to do with them. Well, there are a few instances. So from one of the nodes you can have a little leaf, and from the center of the leaf you'll have the flower spike just continuing. And that leaf typically doesn't transform into anything because in its crown it is actually the flower spike. So this happens. I've seen a lot of Phalaenopsis in the stores with these leaves. They don't really mean anything. You can treat the spike normally, and when it's done you can cut it away. However, there is another possibility in which from one of the nodes you'll have 2 leaves and actually a crown. Now that would be a keiki, a baby plant, and I do have footage of that. So if that happens, if you want to keep the keiki as another baby plant and grow it separately, you need to let it grow a little bit more. Just treat the mother plant normally. You don't have to do anything, just water it, fertilize it, all that good stuff, and wait for the keiki to grow roots. So when the keiki has a few roots, let's say 3 or 4 roots of about 10 centimeters, you can actually remove it from the flower spike. I'll link it down below to a video in which I do just that. In my case, we were talking about dead mother plants, so we needed to save the keikis, but the procedure is pretty much the same. So if you have that type of formation on the flower spike, check the video down below, and good luck with your little keiki. It's exciting, it's a brand new plant. Jenny is asking about an Oncidium which is mounted on a piece of wood, and recently she noticed that several of the older Pseudobulbs have lost their leaves. What could cause this and what should she do? Well, I will guess, because I cannot see the orchid, that is just natural shedding of the older leaves. Oncidiums do that. The old Pseudobulbs are still needed because they store nutrients, they store moisture, but their leaves, being that they're so old, they are prone to being damaged and not function normally, or not function as good as the new leaves. With the passage of time, Oncidium leaves can actually get spotted. They're not the best looking plants when it comes to leaves, certainly not as good as Phalaenopsis. Phalaenopsis leaves are typically nice and luscious pretty much all the time. Oncidiums, especially if they're hybrids with some odontoglossums, they will have some spotting. The older the leaf is, the more spotting it might have. Therefore, in time, these leaves will be shed and you will be left with some bare Pseudobulbs. In this case, you don't actually have to do anything. It's normal, and pretty much all Oncidiums will suffer this. It might not be sightly. I consider them to be nice. I personally like Pseudobulbs. So in this case, no need to worry. It's just natural processes. Some Oncidiums, again, depending on the hybrid, will do this more, some less. Some will look better than others, some will have better looking leaves, and so on. Patrice is asking, how come the leaves of my orchids are so clean and spot free? Well, they're not actually super clean. They're sometimes a little bit dusty. But one thing that I don't do, and you do, and many people do, is use fungicides. I am not okay with fungicides due to their toxicity. Don't get this too hard. This is not advice. Everybody has an opinion on this. It's perfectly fine if you want to use fungicides. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I just don't use them. Therefore, my orchids don't have fungicide spots. So that's one. Second, I don't foliar feed with fertilizer. I root feed, or I don't know how to call it. Again, just my preference, doesn't really mean anything, but that causes the leaves to not have fertilizer stains. And also, I don't have a proper or typical greenhouse. I don't use a sprayer or a misting system or things of the sorts to deliver the water to my orchids. I water the pot with my little sprayer. But yeah, I don't spray anything on my orchids, that's the bottom line. I don't typically shower them either unless they're really dusty, and I do kind of shower them once a year, almost in the summertime when I can make sure the water dries very fast. Because as I was saying, my orchids do get dusty. They just don't have the stains, the white residual stains. But dust, oh my, they do have dust. So once a year, I pretty much shower them, but that's about it. I don't do it too often because there's always a chance that I get water trapped in the new growth, in the crowns, and because I'm growing my orchids in pots, not mounted or on one side or upside down or anything of the sorts, the water just stays there and I am prone to having some rotting issues. So I try not to put more water than I should on my orchids, but yeah, sometimes they do get very dusty, but for me, you know, once a year works. But speaking about stained leaves, I do have a video in which I show you how I remove the stained leaves. It's with lemon juice, check it down below. But in this case, we're talking about serious staining of the leaves. A little word of caution, in that video I'm working with a Brassavola or Rhyncholelia glauca, which naturally has something on her leaves. It just so happens that she had residual stains as well, not only the glaucous formation. So no, I was not trying to remove something natural from the leaf. I was actually trying to remove residual fertilizer or whatever it was, which was present on the pseudobulbs, on the leaves, and on the medium itself. So yeah. Be careful with the glaucous orchids. Broken Keys is asking what to do with an orchid which is covered in happy sap, and whenever they clean the happy sap, it comes back and the leaves are actually dying off because of it. Okay, so in case you don't know what happy sap is, well, it's a cutesy name we gave for the sap which is exuding from the leaves or stems or new growths of orchids. Some orchids produce more sap, and the catasetum orchids are just full of sap sometimes, while others not so much, some not at all. Depends on the orchid. It's not a sign of pests, it's not a sign of disease, it's not a sign of anything. Moreover, in nature some species produce this sap because they want to attract ants, and in return ants will protect from insect predators. It might not be the case of our cultivation rooms. I doubt everybody has fire ants at their disposal, but in nature it does happen. It's one of the, let's say, collaborations. So obviously many orchids produce this sap. The reason why they do this, not quite clear. In some cases it does have to do with the ants, but in other cases not so much. The thing is, orchids exude sap, and it's not a reason to worry, it's normal, but sometimes they can exude a lot. It happens particularly on new growth, flower spikes, new leaves, new shoots, things of the sorts. In the case of Cattleyas, even buds. They can produce it on the buds, and with catasetums, you can see I have it on the flower spike and even the buds a little bit. So everything is normal, but sometimes it can get too much indeed. So much that it can start to collect fungus. It is sugars. Fungi really love sugars, a particular type of fungi at least. Also, it can induce some bacterial spots and so on the flowers. I get it. It's not nice. On the catasetums, it produces bacterial spots on the leaves. Now, if it is so excessive that it's actually promoting the death of the leaf, you might have a problem with your environment. Try to offer more ventilation, refresh the air more often, because you might have an accumulation of pathogens, bacteria, fungi, and all of those fun stuff in your growing room. Sap, yeah, it's not pretty, but it shouldn't be as much as to actually determine falling of the leaf. Actually, let me show you a Vanda. Look how much sap this Vanda has. It has some sap on the upper leaves as well, but here I think the pores are a little bit more enlarged. I do believe I have some scratches here as well. Anyway, but the leaf, you can see it's okay. It didn't fall off. So it's not really typically normal to lose leaves due to the happy sap, but I can understand it's a hassle. My advice is to try to work with it rather than trying to stop it, because you will not stop it. Refresh the air, make sure you have ventilation, make sure the orchid is not placed in very high humidity. I would rather keep her on the less humid side if she can tolerate it, everything that can reduce the pathogens in the air. Other than that, try to work with the sap. If you can remove it daily, remove it as often as you can. You just have to deal with it. Maybe that type of orchid or one of her parents in nature receives a lot of rainfall on a daily basis, so it gets washed off anyway in nature. But in our homes, you know, we kind of need to provide the rain, if you know what I mean. So sadly with the Happy Sap, I told you this before, I don't find the sap to be very happy. It gets everywhere, it damages sometimes buds and leaves simply because our growing spaces are not nature. We don't work like that. Alrighty, I actually have a few more questions, but I feel like this video is already long, so I will keep it for another day of this week. We're gonna have a Q&A party this week. I don't know when my videos will go up though. As I was saying yesterday, my schedule will be a little hectic this week, and hopefully things will get fixed and changed soon. But yeah, just a heads up, I'm dealing with some stuff at the moment, and I'm doing my best, but some days I might not post. Alrighty, so thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it and you learned something new, and you know the drill. If you did enjoy it, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, updates, questions, and all of that good stuff. And don't forget to turn on notifications as well if you want YouTube to let you know whenever I post a new video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye!